Once again, this episode is being brought to you by Diesel Fuel Prints. Diesel Fuel has been in the business since 1991, and Andy has been printing all of my stickers since the early 2000s. He's been a guest on this show, and he's a friend and somebody I've worked with for a long time. So I can highly vouch for his business because I use it myself. Highest quality, weatherproof stickers, easy online ordering, and quotes on any size and shape sticker you can think of. Full color printing and 125 black and white stickers start as low as $25. Free shipping on all orders at dieselfuelprints.com. And my listeners get a 10% discount if they use the promo code AWP 2021. Check out Andy and his stickers. He does a great job. Let's get to the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is Brad Logan. Brad is the author of the new book, Architects of Self-Destruction. There's an oral history of the band Leftover Crack. Brad was the guitar player in Leftover Crack. He was also in the band F-, and he is currently the bass player in the Adolescents. So he's been around the scene for a long time. This book is absolutely amazing and perfectly titled. The band really were the architects of self-destruction. If you are unaware of who Leftover Crack are, they are a ska core crust punk band. That is, just one of those bands that is a standout in the scene. And if you've ever been to a punk show, you've seen Leftover Crack patches or shirts or hats or anything like that. They're an amazingly popular band. I'm very happy that Brad came on to talk to me. We had a really good chat. We're about the same age, and so we kind of came up in the punk scene together around the same time. So we had a lot to chat about in that area, as well as the book and how amazing it was. He did this as an oral history of the book. So you get everybody in the band and surrounded with the band, chiming in from their point of view about, similar stories and stuff. So it's really cool. It's got a lot of perspective of the band. I think it's going to be a huge hit for him. People are going to want to read this book. Even if you aren't particularly interested in punk rock music, it's a fantastic read. So as always, all the stuff for the show, links, etc., are down below for merch, all that stuff. Links to Brad online and the book, where you can find it, will also be down below. Thank you always to all my patrons who help me support this show. And if you want to become a patron, the link is down below as well. And I want to get you right to this chat with Brad Logan. So let's do that right on the other side of the opening intro track. I saw something of you guys playing. And I was like, I don't even know if you were in the band at that moment. But I was like, oh, this is like, there's too much ska on this for me. Like, I'm just not that guy. Like, I'm an F- guy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a hardcore punk dude. And so I just kind of never really paid that much attention to Leftover Crack. And then, cut to, I joined a band that was like basically a crust band. And so I'm touring all over the country and everything's Leftover Crack on everything. And I was like, I need to fucking revisit this band because there's no way this is the most patched band in punk rock. And I haven't listened to them all, you know what I mean? And so I went back and listened, especially like back, 10 years ago. But then recently, when I knew you were coming on, I started reading the book. I was like, well, I better go get reacquainted. And there's actually a lot of stuff that I do. Like, I am still not much of a ska fan. There's something about that riff, that jinka, jinka, jinka riff that just doesn't, I don't know. It's not my thing. But you guys had a lot of other stuff that I wasn't aware of that, like, homeopathy is like, that is a pretty perfect song.
Yeah, I was never a ska fan either. I mean, the scope of my, likes, I guess, the scope of my knowledge of ska was the Specials and, any 60s sort of Jamaican,
Desmond
upset
Decker.
Desmond Decker. Yeah. Shit like that. Right. And it's shit off Harder They Come, so, and really joining the band was, I was working at Hellcat I was just friends with those guys through working with Hellcat. And I kind of like, scouted that, maybe that's the wrong term. I just facilitated, the recording process and involvement, on behalf of Hellcat with them, and, became friends with those guys and, in the process.
Yeah.
And so I already had my own band going when, Sturgeon asked me to play in his new band. And I was like, sure, it was just something to do. Right. Like, I didn't really give a fuck, I had my own thing going and it was just something to do. And I didn't think anything would ever really come of it. And for a long time, I just didn't play the ska parts at all, because I don't play that kind of stuff. Right.
Right.
Then at some point, I remember asking Ezra to show me how to play ska, because it's like, well, I don't want to just stand there on stage not doing anything, like a fucking idiot. I might as well at least pretend that I'm like playing the ska, so
right.
So I don't consider myself a ska player or a ska fan. Again, my love of ska is limited to the Specials and, 60s rock steady, Harder They Come.
Sure.
Wait, F- played with Desmond Decker one time. Here's a bit of trivia for you.
That's an interesting goddamn bill. I liked what we just did, so let's just be recording the episode now, and I'll just put all the intro shit in the intro. But that was good to hear that little piece.
Wait 1 sec, Mike. Somebody is machine gun texting me. Hold on a minute.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, one was you. And one is Sully. And okay, all people that I can deal with later. Okay. All right, no more of that. So
I'll just cut that little piece out. That's fine.
Oh, you would do. Did my screensaver of the Kiss?
Yeah.
Kiss Alive
Totally, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I have to edit all this shit anyway, so don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. You were saying that F-, you guys played with Desmond Decker?
Yeah, we were double booked. It was in Wales, right? Wales, UK, and we were double booked on this night with Desmond Decker. It was like we were the early show and Desmond Decker was the late show. But there was like a like a 50. There was no like we're clearing out all the people and then bringing all. It was just like they both shows blended into one another, and the only thing I guess that would signify there was even a show change was that sort of a crowd of obviously not hardcore punk fans started coming in, right? We were super fucking stoked to be playing with Desmond Decker, because to us it was like we're playing with Desmond Decker. I don't care if this is two shows. In my mind, we fucking opened for Desmond Decker, which is as good as it gets, and we were sharing a backstage with him. The backstage was just like some upstairs room with a pool table, and he just showed up with like 6 of just the hugest, buffed out, gnarly dudes with like dreads down to their asses, like hard looking dudes. And we were all playing pool together, and it was like, I don't think we exchanged words with him. I don't think I said anything to him. I was in awe. I was just like, oh fuck, I'm 20 feet from fucking Desmond Decker playing pool, so, and then he came out and kicked ass, and played all the fucking hits. And, and that to me was like, one of the fond memories. I mean, a lot of, I don't remember a lot of the shows we did or places we toured England and we toured Europe, like, a lot. Right. But that one stands out. It's like, oh yeah, I remember the time we played with Desmond Decker,
Yeah, dude, that's totally rad, man. Like I am an F- fan. I really like that band a lot. That's like right up that's like, I'm a hardcore punk guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like from the original wave of that shit. And
Yeah.
were you always Orange County, or were you like born and raised in Orange County, or were you LA or?
I grew up here. I grew up in Huntington, and
Okay.
I went back and forth between, Huntington, Long Beach, Los Angeles, Hollywood, back to
Mhm.
Long Beach, back to Huntington. Just did that sort of like, trilogy of terror, uh, and then later in life, my formative years were all here. We're all in Southern California. I moved to New York for a while and Kansas for a while later, but
Yeah.
yeah, all the early shows I saw and stuff were all here. It was all in LA or Orange County.
I liked how in the book, when you were talking about F minus, you kind of said like the entire point of the band was just to like hate Orange County.
Well, that was the environment that I, we were pushing back against, right? It was just
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
It's such a different place. Like people who don't know Southern California, they're always like, oh, well, Disneyland's in LA. It's like there's no there. People don't understand the distinction between LA County and Orange County and how different it is, even how different the punk scenes are.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, a lot of great punk bands came from here,
Sure.
I think that, obviously the environment, had a lot to do with that, I think too. I mean, there are worse places to grow up, I suppose, but I didn't, we didn't know anything. I didn't know anything else. I never fucking traveled, I didn't do any of that. I was like stuck, um, and I just knew that I didn't like it. It was just, very conservative you know, uh, there was no art scene. There was no fucking culture. It was like, it was a giant strip mall. Everything's beige. It's just like, fuck.
It's like the Valley.
Yeah. It's like, this is, and the people were just very close-minded um,
Yeah,
uh,
it's not that different. It's not that different now.
not as a whole, right? I mean, not obviously there were exceptions, and
Sure, of
my
course.
friends, and people that I knew, and there were a lot of highly intelligent, open-minded people here, but as a rule, man, the society was just, I felt very, restrictive, so.
Yeah, that's kind of the weird thing about the hardcore punk scene. As a grown up, as an adult person, looking back on my life at that time, and I think that me and you experienced a lot of very similar things out of the punk scene. Where like, I was like a runaway and I lived on the street and I was, fucking sleeping in punk houses and like, just doing that whole thing in that time. And when I look back and I'm like, from the outside looking into the early 80s punk scene, like it must have been fucking weird for like normal people. Like, what are all these like middle class white kids so mad about? Like they have these like insanely like chill ass lives. Like they're, and it's like, I don't know. I know where it was coming from for me, but it's just such a weird thing that it popped up and it became such a huge thing for so long.
Sure. And the thing is that, that's what the punk scene was. The punk scene was the people that were not enjoying this. There were plenty of people, at my high school, there were plenty of people that were, the overachievers and the athletes and the pretty people, the beautiful people, and we were comprised of the people that could not accept this, and were not accepted. And so it's like, not all kids here were like that,
Right, right. For sure. I know for sure it was for me, it was that I could never I could never fit into the like I saw really early on in my life that school was just kind of like It was like a way to teach people how to become employees. Like you go to the same place every day for the same, you show up at the same time, you
Right.
do this, they give you a little vacation once a year, and then you go back and you do it over and over from the time you're 5 years old until you're 18 years old. So that when you're done and you have to go to a job, you're like, oh, I've already been doing this for the last, 13 years, 15 years of my life. And I absolutely fucking hated it. I hated it. I could not stand being in school. And like, I'm like, what are they teaching me? They're teaching me all this shit that like, I don't want to be doing any of this. I want to be like making things or like, and it just, it was so hard for me.
I agree with that. Or they, or teach you how to be a good prisoner, good inmate, and
Well, it's not that different.
Not that different. Right. But one thing I wanted to say about Orange County too is for the record, not everybody in the punk scene here was violent, right? Yeah. It's got that reputation. And
so does like the South Bay of Los Angeles has that reputation too.
And it's just,
it was gnarly though, definitely, but
it was gnarly. And there were some fucking insane, I hung out with some psychopaths that were totally violent and into like, destruction of property for the sake of it, no intent, but I was, I was not a violent person, and I knew a lot of people that weren't. We were just, music fans, right? But I liked high school. I did. I saw it as like it was fucking entertainment, and it was like a gig. We would go there and you meet up with your, by the time I was in my second year of high school, there was, quite a large scene of punks at the schools, and we would go there and, there wasn't a social media where, so that's how you got all your info, where's the gig, where's the party, what's going on here. And, people be drinking and smoking and the fucking, the smokers field, right? Like at 10 in the morning.
Back when you could smoke at fucking high school.
When you could smoke in school, yeah. And so that part of it I dug. And I kept, a lot of times I would go to school and just ditch class and hang out in the smokers field all day, I eventually did, I took the GED and graduated because I was there 5 years. It was like, I don't want to go out to the real world. The real world's going to be worse than this.
Dude, totally. Yeah. Like I ended up going to like a continuation school and I got because that was the thing. Once they put me in like an independent study thing where I was like responsible for my own getting all my own work done. I got like all A's and B's. I was like, they just put me in a room and they're like, here's all your work. It's due at the end at this date. And I would get it all done. And it was never a hassle ever again. And I like graduated with like a 4.0 grade average.
That was the same. I was the same way. Once I got to continuation school, and people, they treated you differently, right? There was like, there was a different level, like of respect. If like you were, hey, it was up to you, and I did way better. I had just blown off so much time in my early years there that I couldn't make up for it. But I remember it's like, when I got to no longer did you have to smoke in smokers field. You could smoke pretty much outside the door of the classroom, right? You could wear like dark fucking glass, like sunglasses in class, the whole time, like a fucking weirdo, which I did. And nobody ever said shit, it was like, fucking blue hair and sunglasses. And it was like, cool, just turn your work in and we're good.
That's like exactly, that's exactly it. And it was like, I think I did 2.5 years of high school in just under 2 high school years. Cause I just was able to get all my back credits and everything. Cause I could just work so fast. And then when I was a senior, there was like, it was like the continuation school I went to had like 5 classes and each teacher was like a different personality. Like they would stick kids who needed like a hard ass in in this one with this one teacher and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I got like the super hippie teacher who's like, hey man, however you want to do it, bro.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, rad. But it was an art guy. And like the first week I was there, I had a sketchbook and he looked at it and he's like, okay, you're going to be my special project. You got some skills. And and then he was like, the more credits you get and the more time you have in your day, like you can just start spending in the art room. And so then that gave me an incentive to bust my ass. Cause like the last 6 months I was a senior in high school, I spent all day in the art class,
Yeah.
and he would give me like month-long assignments. You're going to work on one painting for a month. And I just sit there all day and paint. It was the best art education I ever had.
Yeah. 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 Which sounds like we had similar backgrounds. You're right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff that, the parts of your book, of the book that were you talking about things. I was like, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. Like even like the touring stuff. We are like, touring in a fucking crust band is like a horror show. It's like living in terror for like weeks at a time.
We lived in our own filth. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, because after I got divorced, it's some friends of mine who were like grind and death metal guys wanted to start a DB, like crusty DB band. And they're like, hey man, like, your kids are grown and you want to sing. And I was like, fuck yeah, I do. So then I'm like at 40 years old, like 38 years old, like I started touring with this band. I mean, sleeping in squats and fucking punk houses and shit after just coming out of being like a suburban dad. It was a fucking we've opened my eyes wide up.
Yeah. Yeah. Cleansing.
Yeah. Well, it was the opposite of cleansing.
Soul cleansing.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I did in that whole time mention, got to meet a lot of people. Actually, we are having as mutual friends because, you were in Leftover Crack. So like, Bo Patrick, Kulan is like a good friend that I know from that. And I know you and Kristen are friends with him. And,
oh yeah, he's a good man. Yeah, we love Bo Patrick.
Him being so close to Sturgeon, I imagine, you probably spent your fair share time around Bo Patrick.
Oh, definitely, yeah. He toured with us, went on a few tours with us, driving and whatnot. So yeah, we've done some time.
Yeah, he's a good dude. I did the he has that new book publishing company. I did like all the logo work for that for him and stuff.
He's got a book publishing company? I did not know that.
Yeah, Burn Barrel Press. Now that he's like based kind of forever now that he's like grown up and like put down roots in New Orleans. I actually had him as a guest. I had him as a guest on the podcast. He was one of my favorite guests for sure. I really like that guy. He's a solid dude.
Yeah, me too. I didn't know he had his own press. Is it for like photography or art or like
it's
writing?
Like it's for, I think it's for whatever he finds to be interesting, but everything right out of the gate has been photography stuff. Like I did some cover. He had me process some cover art for him for a book that he put out, and then he has another book, and it's so far I think it's all photography stuff. But when I talked to him, he was like, yeah, I'll do art books, whatever I find interesting. If it's something cool and good, I'll put it out for sure.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool.
Yeah. Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, for sure. He's a good dude. Which kind of leads to the book even a little bit more. So for people who are listening, Brad put out the book Leftover Crack, The Architects of Self-Destruction is, I think it's out like this week or something, isn't it? It's like soon.
No, August 10th.
August 10th. Okay.
Yeah, another month.
But it's about his time in the band Leftover Crack. And it's an oral history book, which is my favorite type of book about bands. There's an oral history book about the Germs. It's one of my favorite books about any band. But I love that you decided to do it as an oral history book, because it just makes it, because you can get each person's perspective on the same story quite frequently. And that's, if you're not, I think that's how you find out the most about life, is by understanding other people's perspectives of a shared experience.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. That's, also my favorite format for, not just for, I guess, music related, books, but, I remember I read one about, E. Sedgwick, when I was in high school. That was my introduction to the oral history, was the Edie book, which I think maybe the same people that did Please Kill Me did that, or one of them. But yeah, it's great because it's like, what's true, and nothing is true. It's just how you want to look at it. And we didn't want this to be some press release of like rah rah go team. It's just like let the reader make up their own opinion about any number of topics in there, right?
For sure. Yeah.
It leaves it open-ended, and we tried to cover as much ground. I didn't want it to just be about the band. That's why we tied in some other things, that I think were relevant to the band, right? The
Sure.
landscape, with me working at Hellcat, and then the squats of the Lower East Side in the 90s, and the chapter on mental health, which is all people who are from the scene, right? All the people that weigh in on that are former or still punks, that are working in mental health, and but just we wanted it to be a bit more well-rounded than just a fucking rock book, and my only regret was that I couldn't put we had to leave a lot out because of the we only had so much space. We could otherwise it would be the size of the fucking Yellow Pages or whatever, right? And
right.
So thank you for saying that. I guess there's a little bit more of my life in it, because it's like, well, I was the one that fucking took on the project, but
sure,
I wanted it to be about other people's lives too,
yeah,
because they're just as important really as anybody in the band, the people around the band,
well, yeah, that's like any band that's been around for any amount of time and has any level of kind of, I hate to say success, because what is even that, but
sure.
like in the punk scene, like if you're around and you tour a lot like you guys did, it becomes like a little community around particular bands. Like each band kind of ends up getting their own little community, and every time you go on tour, you stay with the same people and you see them once a year, twice a year. You see them, every 3 months or, whatever. And it's like,
how it is. You have like an extended family that's like worldwide, and a lot of times, you're connected to people that seemingly have nothing to do with each other, like, scene wise or music wise or personality wise. And it's like, oh, those people, and, you played in that situation with these people. And it's like, I love that about the community. I fucking do,
Yeah, there's like I have a lot of people, like I'll have a lot of musicians on the show, and I'll have a lot of artists, and it, it's like, it always comes down to like, there's like in the punk rock scene, there's like a 1 degree of separation from almost every single person, whether it's a metal person or a punk person or an artist or whatever, it doesn't matter. Somebody who knows it, and it's like this. I'm talking to people all the time, and it's like, oh, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And it's like, how I didn't, you could know that. And it makes me laugh because it reminds me of the part in the book where F- was playing and Joe Sib was there, and he was like, oh, hey, can I like talk to you guys after you guys play? And then you guys played, and he was like, and you're like, hey, could we get on your TV show? And he's like, okay, like hit me up. Like me and Joe have known each other since we were like 13 years old. Like we came up in the scene together. And so like just seeing him show up in the Leftover Crack book made me laugh so hard. I was like, this is like, it's just that validation of what I've spent all of my life doing,
Joe's great. We love Joe, and it was just funny to us, because it was like, I don't know if he truly just didn't have time, or if we were just like, oh, these guys are fucking shit, catch you guys later, which wouldn't have been uncommon, with F-. There were a lot of people who felt we were fucking dog shit, so I don't hold that against him at all. It was just a funny story of like, oh, oh, fuck. I'm just, like walking backwards out the door.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally, man. That is like hilarious. I still like do all the flyers and stuff for his stand-up comedy shows and stuff, and like his merch
Really?
and stuff. Yeah. Joe
I
was
haven't.
one of the first people to ever pay me to make artwork for a band, like back in the 80s when he was in Lifeline. He would hire me to do shirts and stuff. He was one of the first people to give me money and put me on the path that I've been on the rest of my life. Like him and Adam Baum from The Faction, he had IM Records, and he started paying me too. And both of them were like, never, ever do this for free again. You're a professional artist now. And I've never worked for free a day since, And it's like,
Yeah.
And then when I moved to LA, he is starting Side One Dummy Records. And then I did like the very first Side One release I did all the art for, and I was doing all his posters for like Swingin' Utters and all this stuff. And like, he like put me on the ladder, and I started climbing it, man. Like,
yeah, Joe's a good dude. Yeah. I haven't had a chance to see his stand up yet, but I hear that he's hilarious.
He's
and
very funny.
with no profanity even. It's like, so, I'm going to have to catch him one of these days.
Yeah.
How can he be funny without profanity?
I know, right? Like Jim Gaffigan might be the only guy ever who is funny without profanity.
Yeah.
No, Joe does really well with it. And I think, having grown up with them and him always being the funniest guy in the room, always, it wasn't surprising when he went that route. Like when he did the one-man show, I went and saw that, and I was like, and this is basically a big, long stand-up special. And then like when he started actually performing like in stand-up clubs, I was like, well, this is a natural progression for him. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. He's that guy off stage, right? So it wasn't like a stretch. Oh, he's doing comedy. Well, yeah, that's what he does like 24 hours a day anyways.
Dude, totally.
So, yeah.
So many, when we were in our early 20s and everybody started getting their own places, I had a bunch of friends who lived in one big giant house. It wasn't quite a punk house. It was just a house where everybody in it was a punk, but it was, it was like a proper clean house. But, built a half pipe in the backyard. And then it was like, well, I was over there all the time. And it was just like standing on that platform, waiting for your turn, just listening to Joe, just like basically do a stand-up routine. It was great. So many fun times.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that first of all, I didn't realize that you were like a longtime roadie of Rancid. And I didn't realize that you had worked at Hellcat. There's no reason why I would have known those things, but when I was reading the book, I was like, oh shit. Okay. That's awesome. Cause like Rancid is one of my favorite punk bands ever, which it sounds ridiculous when I say I also don't like ska music very much, but, I love Rancid. I know the last couple tours I've been very fortunate to do tour shirts for them. And my 80s band, we played with Op Ivy at Gilman like a couple times. And I never really got into Operation Ivy for those reasons, that I wasn't just kind of not into that kind of ska music. But I could see that they had something special. Like, that's the same thing with Leftover Crack. Like, even if there was a bunch of it that I was like, this isn't really for me. There's some when you can see like the genuine article, it doesn't always matter if it's something that's you specifically like. You have to acknowledge like, oh, that's like a thing, and it's like that's kind of where Rancid and Leftover Crack and Op Ivy are for me. It was like, well, they're just good bands, like you can't argue with that.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I was pretty heavily involved with Rancid for a number of years, and I was road crew for a lot of other bands, but they were through that job, right? I worked at I met them through working I was working at clubs around town, around Hollywood and stuff as the local crew, stagehand and stuff. And I got friendly with their crew guys, who were, they were punks, and it was like I had no credentials for the job, other than I'd played guitar and knew how to tune a guitar, and I just got a call one day from Germany, like, hey, Renson needs a guitar tech. You interested? Like, I have to think about it. I was like really scared, to like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to fucking roadie, and
Have they reached like mega stardom at that point, or?
They were it was right when Out Come the Wolves had just come out.
Okay,
right.
so it was about to get real.
I think Out Come the Wolves had come out that summer, or and end of that summer of '95, and they were just starting their touring in the fall, and that's when I picked up with them, and so it was getting pretty crazy, but I was used to crazy and gig chaos, right, and so but I forgot what I was going to say. Yeah, okay, that was they were my introduction to Leftover Crack too. That was the connection, right?
Yeah, through Hellcat, right?
Yes. Yeah. I never would have, I never would have met, Choking Victim had I not, I never would have worked at Hellcat had I not worked for Rancid, and never would have met Choking Victim, and never would have wound up in Leftover Crack, and it goes in those steps, right? And plus I think that, I wanted to put in a little bit about Epitaph because, remember the 90s and remember record labels and stuff like that. It's like, how that, that whole, before I worked in any of those things, I worked at Caroline for a little bit, and some other, distributors, importers, and I just wanted to be around music. I didn't really care what I did. It was the only thing I ever cared about. Right. So
sure.
I just want to work around it in whatever capacity. I don't care, so, working at venues and stuff and being like, right there, right up in it was like, best case scenario for me, for a guy like me,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess also I wasn't super surprised to learn that you worked worked with Rancid and at Hellcat. Now I forgot what I was going to say. One of the things that like in the beginning of the book, when it's kind of picking up like how Leftover Crack kind of came to be, and that whole when you're in New York kind of scouting for Hellcat, whether or not Leftover Crack is someone that they'd be interested in, and you're like in Thompson Square Park with Sturgeon, and he's bleeding out the face because somebody in the band punched him in the face because they were supposed to go to the recording studio or something. I was like,
yeah.
And then you still join the band, like,
right. I know.
I was like, all right, well, yeah.
I know what's wrong with this picture. Yeah. It wasn't as glamorous as it sounds. I mean, it's not even that glamorous. I mean, it was more like a, hey, you want to go out to New York and find these guys and see if, we can get this thing going with them. I want to put out a record with them. And I was game because I was into going around New York and just disappearing and, creeping around, which that was something I did anyways, and my off time of touring.
Sure.
And that was always a second home to me. And then, after that fight, it was like, and that was something, just none of it was like really shocking to me. And growing up in the punk scene, right? It's like, oh yeah, all right. So this happened. Fuck. Okay. What do you do?
Nobody's going to be mad at each other in the next day anyway. So
no, in the
can't
studio,
take any of that shit too seriously.
It was recorded at a squat. It was recorded at the squat called Serenity, which was, in the Lower East Side. It was right across the street from.
This is when they were still Choking Victim, right?
Yes. yeah. So it was basically recorded in the drummer's living room, I went out there with a guy from Epitaph, Mike T, and he had like, a rack of outboard gear and because they were like, hey, can we just record it here, in Serenity Squad instead of going to a studio or something and be in the environment that, they were comfortable with.
Sure.
And I thought it came out just sounding insane, just massive. It is great. Maybe the aged wood and, and filth had something to do with that, but, yeah, it was a success, and even more surprising was Tim was like, knew the band had broken up and he's like, that's cool. I want to put it out anyways. It's a great record. I want to put it out anyways. That's too bad the band broke up, oh, well, we're still putting it out.
Were you guys aware that they were like squat punks, or did you have any idea what their personal lives were? Or did you just know they were a band you guys were interested in it?
No, I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. And so did Tim. I think Tim had met Sturgeon, I think when, Op Ivy played, the C Squad Basement or something, in the early 90s, maybe before my time. And that's how he had known about him. He's like, hey, I met this kid out there, his name's Sturgeon. He has this band. They're really great. They remind me of Operation Ivy. And and I also have this phone number, you want to see if you can, I don't know where to find the guy, this is your job.
Start at C Squad, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that was, my employment was, it wasn't like I was hired. It was like, all right, well, in between tours and you want something to do, here's a job for you. Go find this fucking guy, dig him out of the, out of the Lower East Side. And the phone number was his mom's house, and because he didn't have a phone. And I remember, meeting up with him and, how it was out here. Like there wasn't really, I mean, there were abandoned houses and stuff where people lived in the buildings, but it wasn't like nothing like the Lower East Side of New York, man. Fucking, we had nothing like that here. I was
the New York squat scene is way more similar to like the European squat scene, where it's like
Berlin, and
it's like it's like a legitimate way of life. Like the closest I ever saw to that in California were the Vats in San Francisco, where it was like, do you remember that place?
During that period of the Vats, I was preoccupied with like going to jail and being a drug addict and whatever. so the late 80s, early 90s, I was indisposed, shall we say. So I know of that period.
That was the only place I could make any kind of like correlation to the East Coast, New York, Manhattan squat scene, which is, I mean, going to Europe and seeing how they do it there was like, whoa. Like,
it was unbelievable to me. I was like, oh my God, I wish we had something like that. To me, it was incredibly organized, even though it wasn't, it was loosely organized, some of them, but, like I was, people out here were sleeping under fucking bridges. I was sleeping under bridges and in parks and cars, abandoned cars. And if you could find a house where a bunch of people could live for free, that was, it was a rarity, right?
And kids of the black hole.
Kids of the black hole. Usually it was a place where one or two people were paying the rent and 20 other people were crashing there, but this, was like, you had people who had just taken over these buildings and
oh, shit, I'm about to lose my battery. If it's gonna go, I'm gonna jump up and go grab a different battery pack and
sure,
and then we'll just pick up right where we were.
So like, with the squats, and then when I started going to Europe and going to some of the literal like mansions and apartment complexes that had been inhabited by people that, I mean, these were, and even those buildings in the Lower East Side, they were buildings nobody fucking wanted, right? It was like, it was a fucking wasteland.
Until the punks moved in, and then suddenly it was like, we got to get them out of there.
The punks and the artists, and But yeah, I mean, if there had been something like that here, it probably would have killed me, really. So maybe it was better that it didn't.
Yeah,
That I
for
didn't
sure.
discover
For
that
sure.
stuff till later.
When we were in Germany on tour, we played at this squat that was part of um, the complex for the Nazi party in Nuremberg, where you see
Hmm.
all those rallies with like 500,000 Nazis.
Yeah.
There's a squat that after the war it got turned into like the immigration center, which I thought was
Okay.
amazingly awesome.
Yeah.
But there's like a whole part of it that is like just squat and like artists lofts and all this shit, and it was like the area that we were in was like it had been the officers headquarters at Nuremberg, and and you're like in this building, it's still got bullet holes in the front of it, and like you're like, holy shit, like like
That's what like Kreuzberg used to be like. I remember seeing, bullet holes in the walls from fucking World War II. And I think they started patching a lot of that stuff up, which is kind of a shame,
yeah.
I mean, I guess on one hand I understand, but for historical purposes, it was like just mind blowing to see all this stuff you had only, read about in class or whatever. And it's like, oh, fuck, this really happened. And here it is.
Yeah. Well, I just like I liked the idea that it had become something that was completely opposite of what it was built to do initially.
And that too. Yeah. The irony of the Nuremberg squat where the, Nazi party headquarters becoming an immigration center,
with the punk squat and a fucking crust venue. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
it's just like, oh yeah, that's rich, man. Yeah,
it's a weird world and a weird
yeah,
life.
yes.
I was one of the parts that you had kind of mentioned a little bit about like the mental health aspect of the book and how you guys address a lot of the mental health issues that go on in the punk scene that don't often get talked about very much. And I thought it was cool that you put people who were from the scene who have gone into mental health in there talking about, that whole part of it. Cause it's like, there's that conversation that's starting to happen more now, I think, than ever, just because of the way the culture, the way the world culture is it's like a lot of us found the punk scene because we didn't fit in, and a lot of and then a fraction of that group of people didn't fit in because they had mental health issues
Yeah.
that weren't being treated, because like in the 80s and 90s, like that it was still a developing thing, like like anything else. And I thought it was important that you put that in there. I think for anybody who reads a book, that's going to go a long way, that chapter.
Thank you for saying that, Mike. I mean, I agree. It's when I got involved, it there were a lot of kids that were in a lot of pain, and we were attracted to this because, we could, either express that, that pain in healthy, sometimes not healthy ways, but, for me, it was a place to go where, I don't want to say I fit in because I didn't really feel like I fit in there, but I fit in more there than I did in the outside society.
Sure.
And there were, a lot of us who were just fucked up, man. And came from really bad situations and, and you're right. There was no, it was still, mental illness was still a thing that you just kind of like, pushed under the rug, or you didn't really talk about it. It wasn't fucking cool, and
Right.
and it was ugly, it was brutal and it was fucking ugly. And the realities of it, it's not just an episode of a show that's wrapped up in an hour, man. I mean, it's an ongoing thing. And I felt that it's a big part of the, the punk scene in my opinion,
Yeah. And even more so, I think when you get down into like, like the traveling punks and the crust punks and stuff, where those people, like a lot of the times have deep damage,
Yes.
from abuse, from family, from abuse, from society in general. And
Yes.
so a lot of those traveling punks are even more in need of that type of understanding, I think. And for you to put it in a book that is about kind of aside from Nausea, like Leftover Crack is kind of the flagship band for that crust scene. You know what I mean? It's like, for you to put that stuff in a book about Leftover Crack, I think is even more important. I think it gets to more of the people who need to be able to like read, understand, and absorb that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we felt it needed to be addressed, and it needed to be addressed from I really love the perspective that Denise and Janine and Nicole and Alice, they all have of coming from the scene themselves, and then worked in it clinically, knowing what they know, right? It's like, it's not just textbook application, they have real world experience with it, and I thought it bared some discussion, and I'm just really honored those guys would do that, and I know the punk scene isn't the only scene that's like that, but it's related to the band in that, it was the topic of a lot of the the lyrics and stuff. Right. And as well as, and played out in the personalities of the band too,
Yeah. I think anybody familiar with the band is also familiar with, with the turmoil of the band. It's like such a huge part of the story. And I think it kind of goes along a lot of the times. In order for something, sometimes for a thing to be like pure genius, it's almost like it can only come from that type of an environment almost, you know what I mean? It's like, you look, this is definitely not a comparison, but Kurt Cobain isn't Kurt Cobain and Nirvana isn't Nirvana. And that doesn't happen if he isn't battling constantly with stuff. And it sucks that society in general, whether it's even the greater punk scene, or they want to throw gasoline on that to keep it going because they're getting something out of it. And it's like, like a lot of times, these are real people, and it's like throwing fire on the gasoline, gasoline on the fire of this kind of genius. I don't know. I'm not a super huge fan of that.
I mean, I think that a lot of times, I think if you're in a place where you are able to say, I suffer from this and that, and you have that sort of, you're able to have that awareness, that is a good spot to be in. Even if you're still suffering, that's a better spot to be in than a lot of what I've seen where people weren't even able to know that stuff about themselves. They just self-destructed.
Yeah.
And they went down in fucking flames, through either suicide or drugs or alcohol or right. To be able to go, God, I got some problems and I need some help. It is like, there's some hope there. Right. But a lot of people they don't even get that far. They just die,
Yeah. I think definitely one of the things that I can think is kind of unique about a life in the punk scene is that we oftentimes see more people we know die younger than a lot of other social scenes. Like, anybody who's ever been in the punk scene for any amount of time has experienced that, and it's fucking hard, man. It's rough to see your friends go when there's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? Like you even if they know you're there for them, sometimes it's not a thing that they're able to, ask for or reach out and get. And it's fucking weird, man.
I agree. In my experience, that's more often the case, is there's just nothing you can do, because you can't make somebody accept the help,
Right.
You can't force them. What are you going to do? Lock them up, and
Right.
like, and that's not going to help, so how do you, it's very sad. Right. But Part of life, right?
And that was the other thing about the book that I personally found impressive about you was that you were clean and sober and entered into a situation with a touring band that you knew wasn't. And you, I mean, that's a fucking act of bravery I don't think I've ever seen from another person. Like that was, I was like, man, he must have been really secure, you know, in where he was at in his life, because that was, fuck, man, that's like some shit, dude.
Or really stupid, you know. You know, I mean, you know, right. You know, I'd been sober for a little bit already, and you know, so I wasn't, you know, it wasn't a threat that you know, I was going to get fucked up over it. It looked like fun to me. Like, God, this looks like fun. And at the time, you know, it's not like everybody in the band was doing drugs, you know, and that it was this rolling shit show, because you know that wasn't the case then, so you know, it wasn't until later that things started to get bleak. You know, it's a very sad book, I think, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there is a lot of sadness in the book, and then there's a lot of triumph too. But the title, Architects of Self-Destruction, is a perfect title for a book about leftover crack. That's for sure.
Right. What else could you call it? You know,
I don't know what else you could call it, because that is kind of really even people in the scene who only have a passing understanding of the band Leftover Crack are like, oh yeah, those guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. Man, it's been really good talking to you, dude. Like, really, really good to get to talk to you and meet you a little bit. I know you got to go do another thing, which I'm sure you're probably going to be getting very tired of before too long with the book.
Yeah, right.
the press tour. Am I the first?
You're the first. This is the first interview I've done, you know, in regards to the book. So
awesome.
So
I'm honored.
Yeah, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. And I think your episode's going to be out this coming, not this Wednesday, the Wednesday after. So it'll be like the first week of August, I think.
Oh, great.
So it'll be pretty close to when the book's coming out. And I'll email you all that stuff. And but I'll let you go.
Please do send me a link, and I'll post it up on you know, wherever all my spots. And again, thank you so much for asking me to be here. And I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, you know, shows are going to be happening again, and you know,
yeah,
I'll be around. I've vowed to go to more shows now. Now that
do you go to LA for shows? Is LA's not that far for you?
It's like 25 miles, and there's really only one club in the valley anymore that does punk shows, and thankfully it's very close, so I can go. But you know what? Actually, they do the punk rock bowling guys, the Stern family. One of the Sterns has a bowling league at the bowling alley right by me, and they have bands quite a lot. So probably start doing that. Like, even if you don't bowl, you can go hang out and watch bands. And like Punk Rock Karaoke played a couple weeks ago, and fun. But I'll be going down to LA and stuff, and you know, if Adolescents play, I'm like, you know, super huge fan, and I know you're playing in Adolescents now, so you know, we'll run into each other. Let
me know, you know, if you want to come to any Adolescent shows, and I think we're doing some with the Circle Jerks, you know, in October. It might be. I don't think it's in LA. I think it's in like Ventura or something, maybe.
That's an easy drive for me, and I really want to go, because like I was saying before, like Circle Jerks were my kind of my intro, and so yeah, that I might hit you up for that actually.
Please do. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, have a great week, Mike.
Yeah, man. Say hi to Kristen and say congratulations on her new art table from me.
I will. Well, thank you again, sir.
Yeah, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.